Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rocket Lasso Live. I am here with a guest. We managed to get all the tech worked out, so I'm going to jump him up on the screen now. I just want to give him a moment of warning.
Hello,
Boom. Let's see if it
welcome
works.
to Rocket Lasso Live.
Oop, do we get an echo?
Hey,
I might be
everybody.
getting an echo. Echo. Sorry about the echo. There we go. Sorry about the echo. I caught it. I had the stream going in the background. So we've got Rick Barrett again from a couple of weeks ago. Rick from Maxon, of course. Let me set the settings here to be a little bit lower on the stream. Everything should be good here, though. Hi there. So this is very, very, very impromptu. Rick just rushed home from the office to join me on the stream. I've been reading all the documentation for S22 for the last hour and a half, taking notes and trying to figure it out. I didn't even get to play with most of the settings. So we do development over here at Rocket Lasso, so we do have access to like the developer build and whatnot. And I had a vague idea of some of the stuff that might be coming out, but I had no idea that this was being announced now and not at what would be typically that, usually Maxon releases things at the SIGGRAPH show. So this was a huge shock to me. So
yeah, that's probably a fail on my side. Sorry, Chris. I should have made sure you were in the loop.
I appreciate that. But at the same time, I got to say, it felt a little bit old school to me, where back in the day, it used to get announced and it would get posted to the forums online, and there's no like live streams or anything. And it would be like, oh, Hair just got announced, and would come out of nowhere. And it's like, whoa. And you just go and you download the demo and you're trying to fight to get it downloaded off the server as quick as possible. And so it felt a little bit old school, a little bit fun in the background. But yeah, not much time to set up or do much in the way of demos or anything. But we're just gonna have some fun, play with it. I'm wearing a hat because I didn't even have time to comb my hair today. So we're just gonna have some fun here. So C4D Live just wrapped up for the day. It started out with Dave doing the announcements, and there's a bunch of really cool stuff in there. I mean, obviously the biggest one being S22, and the S stands for subscription. And yeah. So Rick, clarify or stop me if I'm wrong here, but my impression here is that, and then I haven't heard this officially from Maxon, but from years ago, I thought the word was that there's like German law that makes it so that you can't release like kind of free updates to software. Like there has to be an exchange of money to get new features. So is that kind of why the subscription thing is tied in the way it is here?
Not as such. I mean, you're right. It's not German law, but it's international law. It's generally accepted accounting principles. It stems back actually from Enron, and recognizing revenue without actually delivering product and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. But really what it comes down to with why we're coming out with subscription release now is that we want, our subscribers to have an opportunity to get access to features quicker than ever before. And we have the opportunity now, and it just makes sense from a business standpoint and from a accounting standpoint and everything to be delivering on a more regular basis.
Hey, that's good for us. I mean, if the idea here is that if we'd have to wait a whole year and get a big bucket of features, instead we're waiting half a year and getting half that bucket. So we're just getting half the features. Right. In half the time, which is cool. And then the idea is that if somebody doesn't have subscription, when the full version comes out, then they'll get whatever new features might come out at that time, and also all of these at the same time.
Exactly, yeah. So we'll have another release later this year, and that release will include all of these features, plus a lot of additional features, further refinements on the things that we've put out now, more UVs, more viewport, and then a lot of additional features that we aren't ready to talk about yet that I think people will really enjoy.
Yes, I'm excited, but I'm very excited for what we have here already. I put together some quick notes with kind of just I dumped a big list of everything that I thought was noteworthy that we're going to try and work our way through. And Rick already said that he'd like me to try and steer as much as possible. And whenever I mess something up or he has some extra info, he's going to jump in and stop me. Which is totally cool with me. I love doing this stuff. So let's keep in mind that I have not even gotten to play with most of these before as we go. So this is a very much off the cuff demo. But I am going to, I don't think there's anything else to announce. I mean, well, anybody who's watching, you're probably here because you are already coming from C4D Live. Or you already would know about it. But of course, C4D Live is going to be happening tomorrow, the same hours, and again on Wednesday. And it's still happening Thursday, or is Wednesday the last day?
Thursday as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like
So
a full week of content. I'll be presenting on Wednesday. I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's a really fun project. I actually got to talk to Matthias still because mine clocked in a little over time, and I was going fast, so I might have less question than answer time, but it's like the minimum to make it really good. So we'll see.
well, the good
Um,
news is there's an hour and a half block for each person, but it's actually
exactly.
been really fun today having that extended Q&A time because we've had more time to actually chat with the presenters about their presentation than we typically get. So
Yeah.
it's worked out really well, I think.
Yeah, no, I really like it. I think this is the best alternative to us all being able to physically be there. So it's been really great. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen here. Hopefully, we'll both pop up in the corner, which we do. I want to start out with a shout out to the actual Max on YouTube channel. Because I think these are the best videos. These are very, very well produced. You've got all of your different presenters talking about the different features. It seemed like nobody repeated. It's like one from one person and one from another person. You got a little nose man going in there, and then EJ's doing one. It's just like a nice mix all over the place. So that's really neat. So if you haven't checked these out already, check them out. I've watched through each one of them once, which is where half of my knowledge is going to come from. Uh, so yeah, really great quick breakdowns. But there's a lot of little bits of information that was not covered in there. So I'm just going to dive right on in. I've actually got two copies of Cinema open right now. We've got S22 right here, and I've also got R21, which visually look very similar. So we'll try. I'll just call it out as I jump, and I have those both open so we can kind of A/B test certain things because one of the big things that's happened is more and more of the features of the new core are getting unlocked, and a lot more of the modeling features have gotten implemented into the new core, and the way they've changed is very visual. So without any further ado, why don't we jump in and start playing with some of the new features? So the first one I've got on the list is this resolving
I just
non-manifold geometry. What's that?
Sorry to interrupt you, Chris. I just wanted
Oh,
to
please.
mention that it doesn't look like we're streaming on YouTube, and I think you had intended to.
Oh,
So
really? Uh-oh. Let me
it's not
double.
coming up on my YouTube anyway.
Let me see.
Oh no, we are. Never mind.
YouTube people. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, that's good. No, I've got good looking out.
It wasn't refreshing on my side for some
Yeah,
reason.
sometimes it doesn't. Um, well, yes. Anyway, thanks everybody for making it. We'll chat with the chat a little bit later, but right now let's just try and cover as much as we can because we don't have too much time. There's a Max on meeting that's coming up, and we've got about an hour.
Yes.
All right. So anyway, we got a bunch of new modeling core changes, and mostly it's just integrating the old tool. Like it's essentially taking a brand new system and then giving it the functionality that we used to have. And so a lot of the changes are behind the scenes. And in the notes, it's really great. I didn't take notes of it, but in the behind the scenes notes, there's a lot of notes of like, oh, this feature is 4 times faster than it used to be. This feature is 12 times faster. This feature is 100 times faster than it used to be. So it's like if you're going to extrude like a million polygons, it's now 20 times faster type of thing.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that you won't necessarily see in sort of the everyday operations. But these modeling tools are also the core of a lot of plugins and even some of our features like Mo-Extrude and things like that. So the speed ups will be noticeable at that point.
Very, very, very much so. Okay, so the first one on the list is resolve non-manifold. So the best way I've seen to do this one, I'm going to actually hit and just do a quick path selection here. Actually, there's new features in that one now that I remember, but there's a selection mode for free path and live path. I want live path. So I'm just going to kind of draw out a whatever random selection here. And if we hit the letter D for extrude, we can extrude out polygons. We've always been able to do that. And so we've got these going up, but these are what is considered, I guess, non-manifold polygons, right? So these are connected in a very strange way to the rest of the mesh.
Yeah, they're essentially a disconnect because there's a contiguous mesh and then they come up out of that contiguous mesh. So
so let's see, are those sort of stuck there? It's not moving, but I'm going to click. Maybe I did something weird here. Yeah, they seem locked down, but maybe I turned something on, or they're supposed
you're
to be locked
in
down.
UV. It looks like you've got the UV mode active, but you don't.
I think no, I did have UVs. It kind of looks like polygon, so I think I was in UV mode. So anyway, those are
Okay.
extruded. And yeah, okay. So now you can see I'm moving these around, and these are what's considered non-manifold. And they're connected in this really weird way. Subdivision surfaces get really confused by this type of geometry. It like really messes them up. But there's now a feature to, we can just select everything. And then I forget the shortcut, but it's hard to memorize a shortcut in an hour. Under probably mesh. Actually, I'll just do Shift C, search for the word manifold. Manifold. There we go. Resolve non-manifold. And I think that's going to grab everything. Do we have to? Yeah. Oh, looks like I've missed one. But yeah, it grabs everything that shouldn't be connected that way and will disconnect it. I didn't select all of them. And it disconnects those properly, and that can create a lot of problems. So that will automatically disconnect those. So that was a really long-winded way of saying that these bad polygons, there's a way of instantly disconnecting all of them. Next up is some different subdivision types. So let's make kind of a weird mesh here. I'm going to turn on the polygon pen tool and just really kind of make a wonky looking mesh here. So polygon, if everybody watching has not played with the polygon pen tool, it's been around for a while, but man, it is such a great tool. You do all of your modeling from it. So I'm just going to grab this weird selection hit UI, and it's just a little bit of a mesh so we can see more clearly. And when you go to right click and subdivide, you click on the settings now, and there are several new types that we can instantly get access to, where before it would just be smooth or not smooth, but now we get access to some of the iterations inside that would be inside the subdivision surface. So not too big of a deal, but you click on like loop, and this is a very different type of subdivision, which is also very different from the opposite side. I don't know these very well, but there's different types of triangulated ones, different methodologies for those. So it's neat that is built in. Now, here's one I did not test out at all, and I'm worried that I'm going to do it wrong, but the move, scale, and rotate work with a soft selection now. Was that the deal? Let's see, what's the best way to show it? I'm going to turn on we'll do a sphere, icosahedron, NB, crank up the subdivisions, hit the letter C to make it editable, back to polygon mode. And I have not used soft selections in a long time. So I'm going to grab a couple of points and hit E for move, and then we have a soft selection. I'm going to turn that on, and now you can see that it expands the selection. Actually, Rick, if you can clarify what changed with it being able to work with soft selection better now, because you could always do this.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Oh, dang it. See, that's why I don't make super detailed notes. Well, if
you want to double check.
Yeah, if you want to double check that, I'll move on to the next one.
I am going to make a note here. Blackie, Chan, and Chad asked, can you automatically select the non-manifold polygons with that remove non-manifold option? No, this just automatically disconnects them. But if you use the mesh checking feature, which you can get to by hitting Shift M, you're able to select them in there. So if you go to the mesh checking and then enable mesh check, you'll see that there's a non-manifold option there. They'll show up as red, and you can select them using that function.
Nice. I don't have anything non-manifold, but
you know.
Let's do it. D, extrude, and then Shift M, and then we should be able to select. Boom, and now you can see they're highlighted in red. Excellent. Does that also do it for polys? Yeah, there we go. But yeah, cool. Now I don't know. Maybe Rick can figure out what's going on with the soft selection. But I just want to keep going through the new features. Now some of them are small, but are going to make such a big deal. They're going to be so useful for us in the future. I'm going to start by making a cube. You can tell this is a completely unprepped demo because we're going to be using a lot of spheres and cubes. But the ring selection and the loop selection are way different. So I'm going to get the shortcut UL. It's just the loop selection, and a bunch of different things involved in this. First of all, we can do loop selections, and that's pretty straightforward. But some of the defaults that we used to have disappeared, and it's just become a lot more intuitive, where we can do things like stop at the poles, which actually poles would probably be, what's the situation where you have poles? Is that extruding this type of thing? It still travels around it. Stop at non-quad, stop at selections. Well, here's, let me get to one that I actually do understand, which is stop at selections. And here you can see I've got one loop going around. I can create several loops going around. But now let's say I want to select a bunch of ones in between that. I can now, if I have stop at selections, you see it's trapped in between the other ones. So I can grab that, just grab selections in between it. And that is actually a pretty big deal. I run into that pretty frequently. Now I can immediately go into another feature that I like a lot, which is if we make another selection over here, that the selection isn't being matched on the other side, but now there is a mirror tool. And I think the shortcut was, well, I can't remember. It's like it's something V, mirror select. Yeah, UV. Okay, I was close. So if we hit UV, then hopefully, let's see, UV. Am I mirroring on the wrong axis? Still on the loop tool. Selections. Turn off soft selection. I'll even shift them over the points. UV. That worked before. I'm doing something wrong.
Try just pulling it up because there's actually a cogwheel for the mirror selection, so it may.
Oh, we've also got the manifold or the shortcut Shift M. Turn off the mesh checking. That can't be helping. Okay, so yeah, let's just right click and is the mirror in here?
Try this. It may be in the select drop down. I always get to it through the UV layout.
Oh yeah, I think I did.
That's where I've been living lately.
Yeah, mirror selection. Yeah, I'm probably mirroring on the wrong axis. Yeah, mirror plane. I was mirroring on the one axis that didn't do anything significant. So yeah, I'm just going to make a wacky selection over here, and that is actually the XY axis. So let me make sure that we are actually mirroring on the XY axis. There we go. And now we get the selection mirrored on the opposite side. This is actually going to come in really relevant when we get to the UV stuff. Right. But while we're still on the loop tool.
You just selected tut. That was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. I don't want to lose it. I'm going to keep that file. The next thing I want to show is I thought this was really neat. And this probably got implemented because it was so useful when it comes to the UVs. But, man, it's going to be useful in a bunch of other places. I'm going to subdivide this more heavily. So we get a bunch of subdivisions. Now, if I make this editable, we can go to kind of any tool, the move tool, the rotate tool, the extrude tool. And as you see right now, I'm on edges and I'm just on the move tool. But if I go to any edge and I double click it, it will automatically select that ring. So I can just hold down Shift and jump and grab any one of these rings, instantly grab that. So we could be in the extrude tool and I could extrude these all upward, but then I could just still on the extrude, double click and we got another ring and I could do another extrusion, just double click anywhere. We get that line. We're currently stopping at like at the boundary edges, but that double clicking to select is like a really great addition.
Yeah, I think that's not actually new, Chris.
No, it's in the notes.
It was. Maybe we've improved it or made it happen.
If that was there for a while, then I'm upset at myself. And if I didn't know, then maybe some other people didn't know. So
yeah, hey, part of this is just education, right?
Yep. Now here's one that we need to A/B test. So we're figuring this out as we go. I'm back in our 21 here, and I'm going to create a sphere. And I'm going to go to ring selection. So that would be under select. The shortcut is UB, but then we can go here manually. So if I can see it, ring selection. Oh, let's go to edges. And now you can see that we're selecting around. Oh, that's not the demo I thought it would be. I thought that broke there, but it works. This has been a big lesson. And hey, that worked before as well. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not super clear on the ring selection. There's some improvements on a ring selection, but that's not one of them. Changes to the closed polygon hole. We have more options. Actually, we got a polygon hole here we can work from. So if we hit MD, we've always had a closed polygon hole, but before I don't think there's any options. And now you can see that we do have new options where we could create a Phong break, select the outline, select the new polygons, create an n-gon or even quads. So this hole could be sealed as quads or as an n-gon. Before we didn't have that option, and this is a really great addition to be able to seal this stuff up. Oh, okay, so there is a setting that's tripping me up a little bit, and it's neat. I just have to get used to it, and that is there's a lot more selection tools than just live select. That we got live and rectangle, lasso, but we also have things like loop selection. And if we go to loop selection, if you go to the move tool, you get a space bar and it'll toggle back and forth between select and the tool. But now it'll go back to those other selections as well. So if I hit space bar, it's actually going to jump back to my last selection tool, which is going to be one of these or a loop selection or a ring selection. So yeah, I got to keep that in mind. So spacebar, we're on move, and then spacebar, we're back on loop selection. So that's neat. Now there's a setting which is like shift spacebar, which does something differently. So here on move
Yeah.
shift spacebar, but yeah, what did that go to? I haven't figured
So
it out yet.
it just toggles to whatever your last tool was, regardless of what type it is. So basically, the change here is that spacebar before didn't consider loop, ring, path selection as actual selection tools. It treated them the same as the move tool. So you couldn't toggle between move and loop or extrude and loop select. So now you can, and then the shift space allows you to say you did loop selection and then you did ring selection. You want to go back to loop selection. You can shift space and go back to the loop selection.
All right. Yeah, it's going to take I'm so used to the default selection that's going to trip me up for a little while, but that's all good. More modeling things. This one, I don't have a demo for it, but the bevels have been improved again, where they should be improved. They should run way faster, but the main thing is that they are working a lot better with UVs. And literally, this is, well, what's the best way of showing? I mean, I don't even know if it's super worth showing, but the changes to this are going to be great in UVs, and it's going to work on both the modeling tool when we use the MS being the shortcut, the bevel tool here, or the bevel generator. It's actually applied to all of those. So that is excellent.
Yeah, and this is really one of the big benefits of the new modeling core that now all of the tools utilize, is that it's much better at preserving those surface attributes. So as you do modeling operations, it won't ruin your UVs. It'll actually interpolate your UVs. Same with SDS weights, vertex colors. All of those things will be a lot better preserved through all of your various modeling operations.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to try and break it. So let's go. I'm in R21.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, I want to demo it back and forth. We're back in R21, and let me go to body paint, the UV layout in body paint here, and you can see our UVs here. And I'm going to attempt to expand this out, and there we go. You can see how this exploded all over the place. So it couldn't handle this bevel along here. It messed up the UVs, even though the geometry was good. So now back in S22, we will also do the same thing. Body paint, UV edit, completely new layout, which I love. Bevel here, let go, and look at this super nice clean UV, matching it perfectly. So yeah, bevels will mess you up a lot less. Excellent. A successful demo there. Bridge. This one's it's a specific one, but definitely useful. Let me go to the proper layout. Start.
I think this one's actually pretty awesome because you had the ability to sort of spin your bridge.
Yes. I mean, it's really cool, and it's solving what was a big problem. It's pretty specific. I'm trying to think of the best. Okay, well, we'll do it with a sphere because, man, we love our spheres today. I'm going to make this more difficult on it by increasing our count and make it editable. Do a loop selection on polygon mode, and let's loop this and loop that. UF for fill, UI to invert. Sorry. And now you see we've got that selected. We got the bottom one selected. So if we were to do the bridge tool, actually, this would probably be better if we were inside the sphere. So I'm going to shrink that. Let's see if we can successfully do this from inside. We're going to have to zoom the camera way out. Okay, so we're inside the sphere now, and I'm going to hit B. I think, yeah, B is just for bridge. And there's a couple settings here now instead of it just being a direct setting. And in the past, you used to have to be like pixel perfect and get the exact edge that you wanted. And if you're a little bit off, then the entire thing gets twisted all the way around. So we got a couple options. First of all, we have a subdivision, so we can add some subdivisions in there. That saves us a little bit of time. But in addition to that, we also have spin steps. What that's going to do is it's going to twist one of them around and kind of jump it to the next step of the loop that it did. So if you were off by one, you can just, like I was off by 5 with what I just did. So I did -5, and then now it fixed it, and that is a proper bridge. So now if we zoom out, we have this perfect bridge going between them. So it's the bridge tool is probably a tool you use once a week type of thing, but now it's a tool you use once a week that was really difficult to aim, and now you can correct it very easily. So I do like it. It is a nice little improvement. Next up, extrude edge. This one is another kind of specific one, but I've been running this I've been doing a lot of modeling lately, and I've been running into this quite a bit. So back to our friend the sphere, make it editable, and I'm going to do another couple of loops. Man, this is the demo of loops. So let's do another loop selection, and let's do a loop, and then we'll stop at boundary edge, or stop at wait, am I?
Yeah,
I jumped into 21. I got to change like the color of my background. I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't work. Right? I should subdivide this a few more times. Letter C, make it editable, do a loop, do another loop, stop at selections, just grab a couple of these. I'll even do one along the top. So you could always hit letter D and extrude and pull these out. But if you did anything except for 90 degrees, they really like would shoot all over the place. But now if I hold down shift, you see I'm changing my rotation, and they're actually turning really cleanly now. So I can actually, there's a bunch of things I might be modeling that I could see this tripping me up, and I'd have to, this, depending on what you're modeling, this could save you dozens of steps trying to like individually extrude each one and reconnect them. And now they're just staying connected and rotating and staying matched. So yeah, they really mess up in previous versions, and that looks great here. Let's see. Oh, this is I don't know if this is on some levels. Well, I'm not even sure what the framing device of this one should be, but if you do extrude, inner extrude, and the smooths, I forget what it's called. Smooth. I never use a smooth slider, smooth shift. I had actually never used that tool. It's kind of like a hybrid between an extrude and a bevel, but in any case, these settings now have sliders on them. So before we just had to like drag this number up and down, but now we can just drag the slider and move it around. And actually, it's a lot more intuitive. It's really clean, and I don't know. That's a small quality of life improvement that will probably help dozens of times a day. And that's on inner extrude, extrude, and smooth shift. Loop selection, edge cut. I wrote edge cut, but I actually don't know what that's referring to. Edge cut. Oh, now I remember. Actually, this one's really important to me. So if you do a lot of modeling, then this one is one that I use this on a daily basis all the time, and it just takes a bunch of time to do the cleanup. And that is, if you're making some selections here, I love subdividing these using the edge cut tool. So a shortcut for that is MF, and then usually let's do it the Ngons none. So this is the way it used to be. If I'm going to hit apply here, and you can see it's doing a cut down the middle, which is great. That's exactly what I wanted. But it's now creating these little edges, and you have to clean these up all over the place. And especially if you have extra subdivisions, if you want to subdivide this multiple times, you've now created all these extra edges. And every single time you'd have to go and specifically select those, grab all of them. And if you're, depending on your model, this could be spinning all the way around the model. You have to go and select them. It takes a whole bunch of time to go and do that. But now we hit MF, and now we can change this mode to corners or all. We don't want all. If we do all, it's going to be n-gonning there. And now it did point-based subdivisions, which is cool. There's might be uses for that. But specifically what I want is setting that to corners. And now as I go and I drag, it will do connections in between those, but it'll turn the edges out into an n-gon. And just the ability, I don't know, it just makes you think of it differently. It becomes so clean where, if you're modeling some sort of like venting system, like doing that cut in there just makes it so clean to be able to do that. Grab a couple of these, hit the letter D for extrude, pull it down. And we didn't have those extra edges to worry about. I don't know. That's a big one to me. I'm not sure how much everyone else uses edge cut, but man, that one's neat. Rick, you might be able to add some clarification to this one, but and let me open up something that's maybe just a little more visually interesting. What do I have? The bonus stream. No, I didn't save that in bonus stream. Yes, I did. Aha. So I've been working on a robot. This is the armor that the robot wears, and we'll get to this in a moment. I want to turn off the world grid and turn off the work plane. It takes up a lot of visual space in the viewport. I always like simplifying. So there's some armor of a character, and we're going to briefly talk about some unification between the brush and magnet tool. So if if any of you are familiar, let me make sure I don't have UV turned on. We there's two different tools in Cinema, and they've had it for a while, and that is the brush tool and the magnet tool. And they're incredibly similar tools, but also they had, I don't know, there's certain things you had to do in one, certain things you had to do in the other. And honestly, I still mix up which one does which. But they've gone and taken essentially every feature that one tool had and put it into the other, and vice versa. So we can go and like do things like start dragging out different pieces, different shapes, and control it there. One of the best tools here is smoothing. And you'll see here that here's the main difference between the two. Every feature that was, like I said, restricted to one and not in the other is now shared. But here's the difference is when I click here, you see that it's applying, and I did it backwards. I want to show the other one first. If we use the magnet tool and we are on smooth, which it didn't used to have, but if I click, then what you're going to see happen is it kind of iterates, but only on the current selection. So only the polygons that I actively hit. So up here, if I click, then only those polygons I hit are going to be affected. And I'm still clicking and dragging around, and you see it's not doing anything. It's just reiterating again and again and again. And then if we go to the brush tool, then I love this, which is just, it's doing the exact same thing, except it's constantly refreshing based on where we've moved the tool to. So that becomes like essentially the only difference between those two tools is one is more of like a sculpting and the other is like apply just here and how much do you want it applied on that. So I actually, that's a pretty good quality of life improvement, being able to just iterate through here and clean things up. Let's see, slide. Oh, branches. Yeah, that's not worth showing. Oh, iron tool. This one's worth showing. So I love the iron tool. We don't talk about too much. At least I don't think I've ever talked about too much, but I'm going to take this cube, subdivide it a few times, and let's delete out some of these polygons. So we've got a cube here, and the iron tool, I'm actually blank. I always mix up the shortcut. I think it's MG. Yes, excellent. I always said MS, and that's bevel. So MG is a shortcut. You can also just right click and somewhere here. Yeah, there's the iron tool. Now, this is what it used to do before. If you clicked and you just drag, it's going to round and shrink everything. Everything gets smoothed out. But now we have a amazing checkbox, which is preserve boundaries. So now everything that's an open edge, specifically the back there, when I click and I drag, it's going to smooth and smooth and smooth. And those are stuck to their original position. So you won't be kind of deforming your mesh and shrinking it. And this can automatically smooth everything else out. And this is just a great way of smoothing out very limited sections of your model. I'm currently applying it everywhere, but essentially to do what I just did in the past, we would have had to have selected all the polygons except for the edge and done it. And now it has a checkbox. So that's a very nice quality of life improvement. I wish I had a better scene to demo this. I think the body armor might be okay, but it's going to, I keep on clicking that for polygons. I'm going to select this and triangulate it. So now you can see it's all been turned into triangles. If you remember in the past, in fact, we can, well, I'm not even going to go to it, but we now have, if we click on the untriangulate tool, before we used to have to click on a gear and do a little pop out, but now it's become an interactive tool. It's like a live tool. Is that, how would you refer to that, Rick? Are they live tools?
Yeah, a tool versus a modal command, basically.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So this is now, so this one's now live, and we're able to pull the slider and actually update what is going to change. So I want to start, not create n-gons, and I haven't tinkered with this too much. So if I mess something up, Rick, stop me. Because this angle's getting pretty big, and it's not... Oh, I didn't hit apply yet. Yeah, I should hit apply. That'll do it. Yeah. Okay, so you can see here's the default, and I've hit apply, and as I drag this, it's actually saying what the angle it's looking for the triangle, so we can interactively change that instead of constantly checking which one it is. And there's additional settings for like internal angles and maintaining the ratio better here. You can see that now I'm getting better quads based on that. So you have a couple sliders that this can be a little bit smarter in the way that it's doing the cleanup. So that is going to be really great, especially for bringing in CAD information. Yeah, so right there is the best one I'm getting. And that is a much better untriangulation than we would have gotten in the past. I'm not sure. I haven't tinkered with all the tools, but oh, look, it got really good there. Yeah, there we go. So I put alignment angle as well. There's internal angle and alignment angle. I don't know what these mean, but I just changed a couple sliders and it just fixed up this area, which would be really difficult normally. So I think the proper combination of settings here will really help. So that's a big one, especially if you're bringing in models. You get something off a Turbo Squid and there's triangles everywhere. This is just going to be much better, much cleaner.
Yeah, and again, you
That's,
had the option there to preserve your UV boundaries and your mesh attributes and whatnot. And that's again the benefit that we're getting from that new modeling core.
oh yeah, to maintain the UVs. That's huge. Like I tend to not worry about UVs in general. Actually, what's funny is I hated UVs so much that my entire workflow turned into making my materials from scratch with noises, like layering up Cinema 4D noises, and then you don't have to worry about UVs. But now the UVs are so much better. Now we're going to be getting to the UVs very soon. Actually, I guess it's pretty much time to get to the UVs. Excellent. Let's see. Let's check in with the chat real quick, see how everybody's doing. We're still doing all right. Andy, thanks for coming and making it. Excellent. We got lots of people hanging out. Oliver, Strange, Bob, Epic, Kevin, Joel, 3D Tutorials. Welcome, welcome. Thanks, everybody. DJ, Patrick, Chad's here. Hey, Chad. Chris Crocker. Bob is here from Insidium. Thanks, man.
Hey, Bob.
Bob just had a really cool presentation he did for, what was the show? Vertex? Spencer. Hi, everybody. And then over on Twitch, we got Low Tech, Trey, Crossfader, Orion. Welcome, welcome. Scott, Pro Tools, Grippus. Thanks for coming and hanging out. Man, lots more names here. Ron Rendered's here. Wes Cream, Mr. Matt Dog. We got tons and tons of people coming and hanging out. Thanks for hanging out here, everybody. I guess just a quick heads up for anybody who's super new is I do a live stream every Wednesday where I just answer questions about Cinema 4D for 2 hours. Actually, we've been going more like 4 hours lately. Every Wednesday. Well, everybody's trapped inside. It's fun. We've been getting really good questions. In fact, my presentation that's coming on Wednesday came from a question that originated in the live stream. But yeah, there's a live stream every Wednesday. It'd be great if you come hang out. If you're on Twitch, you can subscribe below. It just gives you a notification. It sends you an email actually when I go live. And on YouTube, I also live stream to there. So yeah, if you want to come hang out, then it's really cool and fun, and everybody comes and hangs out. So Wednesdays at 2:00 Central Time, which is, I believe, 8 GMT, but it's the time zones change, and then I get messed up and I trip over it every time. Okay. So I do not have these all completely in my head, but we do have this armor set up, and you see it's actually, I'm going to revert the file, revert to saved. And actually I was already playing with this one. So I'm actually going to delete the UV tag. So I don't have any UVs. We're going to have to start completely from scratch. Because I did spend a few minutes tinkering when Dave was doing the announcement. I immediately downloaded and I was like, wait, I gotta play with the UV tools. So let's try and tinker around with some of the new UV tools and see what we can get. Now, I do want to throw out that I think, on this mesh, certain things like this was booled out, and it did a good job of booling, but you got a bunch of little triangles. That's a separate object. And then a bunch of these pieces are separate pieces. If I select this and hit UW, you can see that is one piece. This internal venting is one piece. So yeah, lots of separate little pieces. Now, let's see if I can do this correctly. And actually, man, UVs are so much easier than they used to be. So I'm going to change the UV layout to body paint UV edit. And the first thing you're going to notice, everybody, which is so important, is the interface. While it did adapt to be built for UVs now, it did not go completely crazy. It didn't move everything all over the place. To the point where we still can see that our menus, our attribute manager and our object manager, and the way the materials are placed, everything is pretty much where it used to be. We have all of our regular tools up here still. So before, it's kind of like, oh, I need to select this thing, but that disappeared off the menu and I can't find it in any menu. So I have to change the layout, click a button, switch back the layout again. Now, pretty much all the tools are here.
This was really important for us when we were developing, because one of the main pieces of feedback we got was that when I switch into the UV mode, I feel like I'm not using Cinema 4D anymore.
That is very true.
We really had that in mind, especially when we did this editor, and then or when we did this layout, and then also, of course, with the points, polygons, edges, and unifying the modes for those.
Speaking of unifying, one of the big things is there used to be kind of UV points, UV polygons, and then there was the mesh points and polygons. That's now gone. There's only points. There's only polygons, and now there's also edges, which is really cool. Now we need to see some sort of UVs in here. Now I just deleted my UV tag, so it doesn't exist at all. So actually, let's see, what's the best way of doing it? The best way
Go
of
to
doing it,
material tags and choose set UV from projection.
that's exactly. So I'm going to select any material I have. I'm going to right click, and then we can just create any of these. So I can say,
Oh, that isn't what I was going to say.
oh,
Just
really?
right click on your object,
Yep.
go to material tags,
Material
set UV from projection, choose the cogwheel.
Look at that. I didn't know that. Excellent. So we can do, I'm going to do a, yeah, we'll do a flat projection. And I'm not sure what the flat's going to be based off of. It's based off the object system. Hit it. Okay, that's, oh, and I think it's only what I currently had selected. So let me make sure that I either have all or none selected. Let's do that again. Wow, okay, I did not know this was here. So I'm going to try that again. Nope, still the same selection. So maybe, I mean, there's a good, oh, no, that's probably fine.
Not sure
It's
why.
in UV mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I had the UV mode on. I have
Well,
possibly
what you
different
could do
selections.
there is just choose the new automatic packed UVs and generate a UV set directly into the automatic packed. And then if you want to switch to frontal, you can do that.
Automatic packed UVs. Well, that's cutting right to the chase. You got to tease it.
Oh, sorry.
Slowly. Well, let's see if I'm going to kind of do it the way I generically would. Actually, this is our tool. Doing the tool this way throws me off. I'm going to try doing frontal. That's the one I would usually click on, hit OK, and boom. It's essentially taking a projection of whatever I currently was doing, and it's putting it here. And then I don't know for sure. Actually, I'm going to do this right now. Let me hit undo. And I want to do the same thing. If I'm looking at from the view here, does it also adopt to that, or is that going to? Yeah, it does. Cool. So I'm not sure. I was using the flat projection wrong, but we did a frontal from a flat view, and now you can see that all the UVs have been adapted here. Now these are the UVs. It's a fairly dense mesh, and it's overlapping itself a whole bunch. But here's where things start getting interesting very quickly. I'm going to select any given polygon here. Let me just grab the shoulder and hit UW to select those. And there are a bunch of different buttons here in the middle. And essentially all the important buttons are right here in the middle. So I'm going to begin just by clicking UV unwrap. And it could take a second. In fact, a couple of these did take a little while, but there we go. Just that one section has gotten unwrapped without any extra information. I didn't pin anything. I didn't cut any edges. Now, keep in mind, this is an open mesh in the bottom. There's nothing sealing it off. But this automatically took just the thing I had selected and created an island of the UVs now unwrapped. So let's go ahead and select all of them and say UV unwrap on all of these. Now, this is a pretty dense mesh. This could take a second. And
now and again, this is working in this case because the meshes aren't closed. Otherwise, you would need to select at least one seam to open the mesh up.
yes.
But then the beauty of this command is that you had the option now to do it iteratively. And we haven't created a shortcut for this. We probably should have, but shortcuts are hard to find. So you can find your own shortcut. And basically, you can continue to do path selections or loop selections. Just select a few more edges and hit that command again, and you'll just start to see the pattern cutting open and making those seams, sort of releasing the tension on the UV map.
Yeah, doing one after another. In fact, we'll try cutting a hole in this as soon as it finishes calculating this one. And yeah, oh man, I should have restarted. I've been doing a lot of things on the computer today, but we'll just let this one finish up. I think it did take a little bit when I had just thrown this entire mesh at one time. And like I said, it's a fairly dense mesh, so I'm not being very fair to it right now. So this one's on me. But
while we're waiting for this to process, one of the questions that came in via chat is about plugin compatibility. And in general, most plugins should be compatible with most R21 compatible plugins should be compatible with S22. A few plugin vendors, Octane, Grayscale Gorilla, had actually kind of assumed that we were going to break the SDK. And so they have to make some adjustments to actually bring compatibility back. But in general, most of the plugins should continue to work. And Redshift doesn't have an updated installer yet. But if you just point the plugins path at Redshift, at the Redshift installation for 21, or copy it into the plugins path, it should work fine.
Yes, exactly. And I do want to throw out there for Grayscale Gorilla that Rocket Lasso has been fixing the plugins. And so it's actually, we're contracted to help out with the plugin. So we're actually the ones who were like, oh, R22 is going to break it again, which would make it so that R21 would have to be updated. So we're going to make it so R21 doesn't break when R21 comes out or R22 comes out. So we're the ones who set that one up. So it's being fixed right now as I speak. So this worked great. There's just one errant point that snuck out. So I'm just going to pull that one in. And now let's check out the end result that this just gave us. And that is pretty cool right out of the gate. Now, I actually clicked the setting already, but under view, I'm going to tear this out. There's a bunch of new ways of viewing the mesh, viewing the UVs. And currently we're in what I think is the coolest one. This would be the default, would be kind of blank and empty. But there's a mode called distortion. And when I click distortion, and if we're on the display tab here, we can actually crank this up more. And what we're seeing is how the mesh got kind of stretched and squashed in various areas. And so you can kind of give things a little bit more attention, like inflate them or deflate them, depending on how much it like compressed or stretched. So you see here, I think is red. Yeah, red's compression, I think. So these are getting squished in a little bit too much because there's so much geometry trying to go into one area. And the blue are the stretched out ones. So being able to get that information is really neat. But in addition to that, we can also click multicolored islands and see all of these separated. And we've got the outlines, which are automatically set up. Now, I haven't figured this one out yet. I'm going to say I want to see the connectivity.
These things should be showing in the 3D view as well, but it may not be just because your texture's over.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that.
The top of it. Or maybe, it's just because you're not in polygon mode, I think.
Oh, yeah. I think I didn't have the UV tool selected.
Yeah.
It's not showing all the great cuts because these are all separate pieces. So yeah, we'll slice one of these up to start checking that out. But while we have all these, and I guess none of them are connected, so that wouldn't even show that. That's why oh my God, I just realized when I was trying to do a practice of this and I was trying to show where the connectivity was, but literally none of these pieces touch each other. So there's no way it could show it.
Right.
But I'm going to go to edge mode, and on edge mode, we can just double click and it's going to make a cut across here. And the equivalent selection should be automatically happening on the model. So anywhere that I double click,
it's around back there.
Yeah. Anywhere I double click, we could do it here. Maybe that double click. I'm not in the move tool. E for move. Well, it works here. We can grab this cut. You'll see the equivalent one is selected over here. We can add cuts, subtract them. So with that being a new cut, I literally haven't done this yet, Rick. So stop me when I go to click something wrong. But I've done this cut right now. So if I click unwrap UV, will that split them apart?
Yep.
Bink. Give that a moment. Once again, a lot of polygons there. I think I just messed up. I didn't do a polygon selection, so it's doing the entire thing again.
Right.
Dang it. That was on me.
This may be a little bit of a dense mesh to.
I should have brought the non-subdivided one in. Whoops. All right. Well, you talk for a second, Rick, until that pops back up. Man, I should have done the selection. Let's see what the chat's saying. Yeah, Brad, that one's on me. Let's see.
See if there's anything else that we haven't addressed in chat here.
Pro Tools is asking about the UV transform tool.
There was a question here about the S22 scenes and whether they're fully compatible with R21. Yeah, they really should be, because there's no new objects or anything being introduced with S22. S22 is all about new workflows and new tools. So you really shouldn't have any compatibility issues jumping between R21 and S22. And that was something that was, important to us to try to maintain, being that this is a subscription-only release.
That is a very good point. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything that would break, and it's just, I think all the same. The tools controls have changed and gotten more deep, but that's like, you've changed your mesh. Of course, that mesh is still going to go and open up. Tobias, I don't think hitting render in this case would actually stop the process, because that would interrupt it. And right now, I'll try it. I'll hit Control R, and Rick, maybe there's a better way. I think the programmers had said that just hitting escape works, but and that one just finished.
There, it just finished.
But a trick I like doing is if I click on something that I shouldn't have, I like hitting render, like the shortcut for render, Control R or Command R, because not only should that interrupt, if you have a simulation going, that will pause the playback. And then it will also visually render, which gives you an indication that it's like, hey, it stopped and it started rendering. So now you're free to control it again. So that one thing exploded out again. But, well, I guess here's the important part we're just testing is these two have now split apart into separate pieces. I don't have any, man, I must have really, that's that where I booled out that shape. So there's probably some terrible connection between those.
Yeah, that's really weird.
I don't want to, let's see, what's a better...
Just select.
I don't have any content browser content, so
just
I don't have
polygon select one island of that, so that we don't have to worry about. Yeah, there we go.
So let's see. I'll do a double click. A nice loop. I actually didn't want to loop.
Yeah, this is where it might be better to do a path selection in the viewport. Path selection in the UV editor is something that we're definitely looking at. It's just not something that we had time to get to for this release cycle.
Yeah, the curves I have here are really wonky, so I'm just going to do a couple of ones on the outside there. So we got these loops, and make sure that the polygons are selected, which they are. So now I can click UV unwrap just on that little section. Give that a moment to go. Once again, this is iterating through what's probably
hopefully restricted selections was on in the cogwheel.
Oh my God, is that a checkbox?
It is a checkbox.
Oh, I did not know that, and I think we did. I'm actually, if I did it this time, I'm glad it happened, because at this point, that's just.
There should hopefully there's some test breaks in there too. Have you tried hitting escape? Is it?
No.
Is it giving up or?
No, I think it's still going. Yep. Well, all right. Back to the comments. I can't believe I clicked it again. Chris, I definitely want to show. Yeah, I want to get to those. I just want to show some of the UV stuff, and I've barely gotten to do any of it because I keep on clicking this button, and we have to wait for my 20,000 polygons to figure themselves out.
Oh, hey, Fritz. Fritz pointed out something very good, that the one issue that you will have is that the extrude object has the automatic direction now. So you can put in a whole bunch of splines that all have different planes of, major planes, and it extrudes, automatically detects the plane of the spline and extrudes in the right direction. That is not backwards compatible. So if you use that in an S22 scene and open an R21, I'm not actually sure what will happen, but it won't work the way it does in S22.
Yes, that's true, and it will show that one off in a second. As soon as this finishes my bad click.
We're gonna have to find a better.
Oh, there it is. Aha, yeah.
There we go.
Let's go to the right there. It was off. Restrict the polygon selection. Oh man, I don't have the content browser, so I don't have any of the nice meshes anywhere.
If you want to switch to me, I could show the UV unwrap really quick.
Totally, let's do it. Oh yeah, you got models that are appropriate to do this on.
Well, I had the content library. So let's just grab a head bus, which of course is already unwrapped, but let's assume it wasn't. So we'll go ahead and frontal project this. And, if we want to go in here, first thing we'll do is make a loop selection around the bottom, and we'll hit UV unwrap. And so you see we can able to separate those two islands. And then obviously we've got a lot of distortion here. This isn't the type of unwrap that we want. So we can go into the path selection and just start cutting down the back of the head. And we can hit UV unwrap. And you'll see that it starts to sort of relieve that tension and open up the mesh. We can keep going like this. And keep cutting across. And then we get up here.
Seems more painful as you do it step by step.
We can select across here, and this is where that mirror selection really comes in handy. We can select to the other side, and unwrap that. And so basically it's a process like that. Just for the sake of showing the connectivity stuff, let's try and cut out this ear. We'll kind of do it like this and do a fill selection. And then we'll do a fill selection. And then we'll just pull that out with the move tool. And then we can make sure restrict to selection is on. Oh, it's because I'm in polygons. Make sure restrict to selection is on, and we can unwrap just that ear. And we can go into UV transform tool, scale it down. Whoops.
Oh, you still got lots of edges selected. You're an edge.
Oh, yeah. Whoops. There we go. Thank you, Chris. We can just sort of transform this where we want it. Now, if we go into this connectivity, and this is what Chris was trying to show earlier, you can see that the red line here is showing where that island connects, and the yellow line here is or the orange line here is showing where this island connects. So we're able to sort of see those things, and then when the connectivity won't show in the 3D view, but if we go into multicolor islands, you can see that those are showing here in the 3D view. So we can see which island relates to what part of our mesh. And this gets really helpful when your mesh starts to break up into a lot more pieces.
Yeah, man, there's so many great little changes and tools. We didn't do the unpacking. I actually kind of wanted to do that, but I'm scared that I'm going to break it. I was going to open up a different model. Do you want to show the extrude tool? And I'll just check this on my end.
Sure. So the cool new feature of the extrude is, for this, what I'll do is just grab, let's grab some stars, and we'll just go ahead and clone the stars. And let's go ahead and we'll make the stars smaller. And give ourselves some more dimensions. And let's go ahead and randomize them using a random effector. And I want to actually, instead of randomizing that, let's randomize their scale. We'll go 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, and we'll rotate them. This is the important part. So they're all facing in different directions, right? And this would be, you wouldn't be able to extrude these as splines before. You'd have to actually break them out into individual splines, but now you can just drop this into a cloner, turn on hierarchical, and you can see that the sort of direction of each of those splines is being detected, and we're actually extruding in the direction of the spline. So that's a really handy new feature, and really, I mean, this is sort of the most complex version of it, but the simplest version of it is that almost every time you created an extrude, you would have to adjust the movement because your spline was on a different plane than the extrude was. I mean, I think this was the default case, that the extrude would extrude back in Z. But now, regardless of which direction your spline is facing, the extrude is able to automatically adapt to that direction. And so, I mean, this is just one of those things that's going to save, I think, a ton of time in just the daily workflow of, every time you create an extrude, rather than having to make those extra 3 or 4 clicks to change the movement direction. It's just immediate.
Yeah, every time you make a text spline, it's like, nope, not that one. Whoop, nope, not that one. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is working well over here. So I'm going to switch back over to me for just a little bit more UV stuff. So I got a little robot character here that I'm going to be posting around soon. He does a nice little transformation. But I just went and simplified this, where I just took that entire model and I baked it down into a single mesh. So we're going to make this as kind of bad, as rough as we can for cinema. So we've seen how well that's gone. Unpracticed. But now let's change to the UV layout. And there's the robot. Now, that button that we were just finding by right-clicking, it's also set up right here. So we can click the set projection from here. That's, again, going to do the frontal projection. But this time, instead of doing the UV unwrapping, we can go down here to the automatic UV, and we got a bunch of different modes. And I think this is the new one. We got the new one right here, packed. And if we click that, then very quickly, it's going to explode it out based on its different planes and explode it into all the little pieces and try and fill up as much space as is possible. I thought it's so cool that these will put pieces inside of other pieces. Now this has 1% spacing. I wonder how small we can go. Is 1% the minimum? I'm gonna say 0.01, so just the tiniest little bit of space. There we go. Look at that. Wow.
And that's one of the things I was going to mention is that the default is of 1%. You'll actually get a much better unwrap in a lot of cases if you reduce that spacing percentage. I found.
Yeah, look at
and that's
that.
something I just realized recently, or else we might have changed the default.
Yeah. All of these, well, first of all, I can just select any one of these polygons, hit UW, and that's all selected. And now we can see what the equivalent is over here. So there's all of those pieces. So you can see even these loops, they're getting unwrapped as a ring. Man, that's gorgeous.
Yeah. And this is, again, where that multicolor islands really comes in handy.
Yes.
To be able to see the relations. This is all technology that we licensed from Quell Solar, the Ministry of Flat Technology. So
what a great name.
Really excited to have this on board. And it's super fast, and also you will find sometimes that it breaks things a little bit more than you would have broken them apart, but it's very much optimized to trying to give you the best texel density possible, the most pixels per UV space possible. So it's going to sometimes break your islands apart just so that you have better resolution in your texturing.
So like this shape could have maybe been a little bit like more of the loops, but it would eat up too much of the space. So instead it's like, no, we'll break that out, and now we can squeeze it somewhere else, and now you get more pixels.
Right.
Excellent. Man, I mean, I've always thought, like, well, first of all, this is pretty gorgeous right out of the box. Like, I'm trying to imagine what we'd have to do to get this before. And I've always thought nice looking UV layouts are almost kind of like a little piece of art you want to hang up on the wall. And like just this, it's like, look at all these shapes automatically pulled out and placed everywhere. I did not test this, and that's what this looked like right out of the box here. So man, that's great. And yeah, the different islands, we could see the stretching. Oh, I tore off the view panel here, so we can click all the different ones. We can click the distortion again. You can see very minimal distortion here. Some of the curves, you see there's a little bit, but most of these have zero distortion relative to each other. And let's see, where is there's the islands, and then click the seams. I want to see the connectivity. Oh, look at that. So we can see where, I mean, there's a lot of pieces here, so it's going to be very difficult to see exactly where this pink matches another pink. But man, look at that. Let's see, what's next? Is there more to show here? I mean, there's several different UV unpacking modes, but I don't know when and how to apply them.
We're talking about packing specifically. So the bounding box packing there is actually the old realign mode that used to be on the first tab. So there's not really anything new there. We just moved it because it made more sense as a packing operation.
I see.
The rasterized packing you see there is basically the same technology as the automatic packed UVs. It's using the Ministry of Flat technology in order to pack things in a rasterized way, which means that basically, if you notice there, the biggest islands sort of start in one corner, and then the islands get smaller as you move out and down. And so that's sort of the way that packer is built to work. And then we've also introduced a new geometric packing algorithm that was developed in-house, and it gives you it's better for things that have been manually unwrapped, and it gives you a very tight packing, which honors the concavities and the holes and takes advantage of all of those things, but will also give you a very tight pack.
It could be a bad idea, but I'm going to click apply.
You can go and give it a shot. It is a little slower than the MOF. In this case, it might be coming up with a very similar result.
Well, I just click rasterize. It did this. I'm going to click on geometric, and click it. Maybe it's like, hey, it's already good. I don't need to update.
It
But
might be the case.
if we had
Yeah.
a messed up one, let's try hitting bounding box. Or maybe because they're already all set up, it's smart enough to know if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
There is, I will say too, also that there are some cases where the rasterized packing actually has it has some inbuilt mesh optimizations, where if your mesh isn't quite perfect, the rasterized packing, the automatic packed UVs will sort of save you from yourself. And the geometric mode and bounding box modes don't have those same optimizations. So there are some cases where you might find that the rasterized mode works and the geometric one doesn't, as you'd expect.
And I'm not sure when or how it applies, but we also have the overlap islands and also overlap mirrored islands, which should, it's probably really specific on the algorithm, but the assumption here would be that if two shapes are identical and they're kind of mirrored sides, it's like, okay, those can overlap on top of each other.
Yeah, and it is really specific, and this is something that works better with the automatic packed because it sort of goes back to the mesh and figures it out as it goes. Whereas with the geometric, it kind of is relying on you having identically unwrapped your mesh, and it's hard to have it have been identically unwrapped in all the cases. So mileage can vary a little bit with that. Those are definitely an area that we're continuing to work on improving. Somebody asked about UDIMs, and that's definitely something that's on our radar, something that we know Cinema 4D needs support for. Something that Redshift has, but it's a deeper topic than UVs in and of themselves. It's something that needs to be built into the material system as well, so it's definitely something we're aware of, but not something that we're quite able to get to yet.
I just can't stop looking at these UVs. Let's see. What am I missing with UVs, Rick? Anything else worth mentioning?
A couple of people have asked about sort of stitching and sewing UVs, and while we don't have a pure stitch and sew functionality, we do have the UV weld and relax command there.
I don't understand it. Do you want to pull the head up and do it on your
Yeah, sure. It's basically the inverse of the UV cut command. Let me get into the right layout here. So basically, if we were to select a loop here and we say UV weld and relax, it's just going to re-weld that into the hole that it was in. If we were to select this here and say UV weld and relax, it would weld it back together where it started, more or less. And then we could go in and say, we'll try cutting that again. So it's basically the inverse of the cut. It's the re-stitch. Now, it's not like a stitch and sew in that it doesn't really, I mean, you have to pin and, it doesn't like.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to show the pinning?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is not a major thing, but basically one of the issues that we had was pins were not persistent. And you kind of had this weird workflow of having to work with them in a selection tag. And
or the active selection. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in order to sort of clean that up, what we've done is we added this persistent pin thing. So you hit add UV pins, and you can see that it creates these pins that are sort of highlighted in red. It's not easy to see because the mesh is red. That's actually the multicolor islands that we're seeing there. So you see the pins here, and then those are going to be locked. So when we do a relax UV operation, whether we do it through the UV unwrap or down here through the pinpoint selection, it's actually going to keep those things from distorting.
Those are not allowed to move, and everything else has to move around them.
And you can see in this case, because I didn't have enough seams, it really created a mess. And because
you just want to do a couple
like
of points.
Everything.
Yeah.
Normally you want to just pin like, a couple pieces in the forehead or something like that. But that's the idea behind the pins anyway.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, okay, like all this new automatic stuff and the being able to unwrap very specific parts and then iteratively do the cuts, and all of that is great. Those are huge tools. We need them. But I almost feel like just the reorganizing of this interface is as important as those tools, because you could do a lot with the old one. You just had to fight to make it do those things.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, okay, you do a selection, say cut. It cut where you selected, like boom, done. So
totally. I think that the biggest thing is sort of the unification of the document modes. And Chris has kind of hit it accidentally a few times, but this command is important to, or this mode option here is important to recognize. Normally, you can just leave this off because it's going to sort of automatically determine whether you want to work in UV mode or 3D mode based on where you're focusing the mouse. But if you specifically want to work in UV mode, you can toggle this on. And you notice when I do that, the coordinate manager changes. So it actually changes from being the 3D coordinates to being the UVW coordinates. And also you'll notice sometimes with your tools, that'll force you into the UV version of the tool versus the 3D version of the tool. That's also important because Cinema 4D has this really cool feature where you can actually slip the UV map in 3D space without actually, like, you can move the 3D map in UV and it'll adjust the UV map here as you do that.
Interesting. I'm gonna pull on my screen again because I just remembered one other little thing, which is if we go back to our view, let's see. I'm going to click on configure, which will pop open the UV settings right here. You can also click mode UV settings, but I think you can also turn on, right now it's viewing an empty canvas. And if you're painting, obviously it would show the painting, but we can also click UV map and it's going to project, let's see, let me turn off that. It's going to project this nice grid material on here. And you can actually get the feedback via that as it's moving through. And we can also see that projected over here onto the character. So you can also check your UVs here. This is a very complicated mesh I just threw it on, but if you put on something a little simpler, you can see it unwrapped. But it's great to be able to jump between those different view modes and get that feedback instantly. Just another nice little quality of life.
Totally. And one other thing I want to make sure to mention is that I think that automatic UV especially comes in handy in the baking. So we've actually implemented it when you bake object or bake texture as well. So this really is cool because, like you said earlier, Chris, you never worried about UVs before. You just threw procedural noises on stuff.
Yeah. Or
but the
cubic
problem
projection.
is that if you had to, or use decal maps and all those tricks that Cinema 4D users have always used to avoid actually having to do UV mapping. But the problem is that when you want to export that into a interactive thing like a game engine, you need a UV map at that point. And the great thing is that with this automatic packed UVs integrated into the baking functions, you can get a really nice usable UV map that's just automatically generated out of all of those procedurals and stacked materials and decal maps and everything.
Yeah, it's spending your time specifically doing this yourself and making really nice clean UVs. That's maybe nicer for painting, but if you're baking a material onto the surface or you just need to project something, then we have a one-click solution now.
Totally.
Excellent. Okay, we don't have too much time, so I would like to show the viewport. Do you have anything super nice to show the viewport, Rick? Because I would be literally making the scenes from scratch.
Yeah, I've got some stuff.
All right, let me make sure it's your screen. There you go.
Let me see if I can pull up. I had a scene I was playing with earlier. Yeah, here we go. This is one of the scenes that we used to show back in R19, the last viewport changes.
Which was huge.
Yeah. So basically, lots of enhancements here. Actually, I'm going to pull up a different scene, come to think of it. And for those of you who watch C4D Live, I did use this scene earlier today. So I apologize for duplication, but it's the one I have handy to show these features. So, here we have this mouse from the content browser. And the great thing is that we can just tear out the UV panel and we can just start disabling things and get them out of our way in a way that you weren't able to do before. We can get rid of all of this extra junk that gets in the way of viewing the animation. In fact, you can hit geometry only and get rid of everything that's not geometric. But then in this case, we've got a character animation. So we might want to see our splines, which, by the way, we've made it a lot easier to select splines within the view, especially for our character animators.
Very important.
So you can have a mode like this with the splines on, and you can actually save your own preset for this. So I can call this my character animation preset. And now that's going to ride right along with my presets. And you can see that there's actually some presets that were created in here for us, like sculpting. It turns on, the things that would matter for sculpting. And modeling, makes a few tweaks to that. My character animation one's just going to have the splines on and nothing else. And one of the things that really surprised me, because I wasn't actually that involved in the viewport development while it was happening, and somebody showed this new hair feature, and I was like, wow, that's just amazing. We can go in here now to the editor tab of a hair object, switch the display to hairlines, and turn on this enhanced viewport shading. And you can crank up this detail. And I mean, the hair just looks amazing right there in the viewport now.
Oh, man, look at that.
So, I mean, that's just awesome, I think. There's a lot of places where the look of the viewport is just a lot more similar to what you're going to get in the renderer. This car, we'll go back here, geometry only. We'll go into the view settings. And one of the things I'll mention is that we moved a lot of the sort of common preferences for the view settings into the preferences. So you can control those here in the viewport display tab. Things like the axis size and the point size and the edge size, the spline size. I was mentioning the being able to adjust the more easily select splines. You can actually make them wider by default now. And so you have all these options that are sort of common to every installation in the preferences, or every scene in the preferences. But then you have the more scene-specific or view-specific options here in the view settings. Now, used to these view settings had sort of this weird concept of like global and local that nobody really ever quite grasped. So because that was confusing, we got rid of it. And you're able to just adjust these on a one-by-one basis. But we added this new option for configure similar, which kind of gives you back the global function that you had before. It basically selects all of the similar views, all the perspective views in this case, and allows you to adjust those at the same time.
Okay, I get it.
So,
yeah, it was always a thing that you had to click the viewport to acknowledge that viewport to make the changes. And I could see that tripping people up.
Yeah. And so then I'm just going to go back to configuring just this view. And you go into this effects panel, and here you can see some of the new options that have been added. So like the transparency has dramatically improved.
It's not just dots on the screen.
No. And so you've got much better control over the transparency. Shadows actually now can pull in colored. You don't see it here, but they can actually pull in colored shadows. You can bring in more accurate shadows, better shadow map sizes into your scene. The reflections, Chris actually didn't realize before we were talking about this, that the screen space reflections was added much before this, but what's new is that bump is actually evaluated in the screen space reflection. So if we turn on a bump on this floor, let's just make it noisy. We'll bring the scale down. It's actually adapting the reflection to the bump on the floor.
That's crazy. I didn't know you could turn on. I thought you could only reflect the sky. So the fact you could do this at all, I'm like, what?
Post effects. There's more post effects. I don't have the list in front of you. There's more post effects that are now supported in the viewport. SSAO has gotten this per material or diffusion mode and some additional features in there. But the biggest enhancement to the SSAO, as well as the screen space reflections, is these screen space effects no longer evaluate the other scene elements like the cameras and splines and things like that. Those used to be mirrored in those screen space effects and really kind of muddy up everything. But now they don't show up in there. And of course, you've got the ability to add super sampling right here in the settings. And, this isn't new, but I love going into another camera with the depth of field enabled, and the depth of field is just so
and that's
awesome.
The viewport. Oh man, so good.
Yeah. And I noticed that Quasar, I think is what he goes by on Twitter, but Joe has posted some really nice viewport renders that were done in S22, one of our beta testers. And then, of course, you go into the viewport renderer, and you have all those same options here that you can render a render straight out using the viewport. And, of course, these are going to be super fast. You can set your anti-aliasing, your super sampling. You can copy the effects from the viewport. You can copy the filters, and you have the option here. You can just set up a preset that's already set up to use the geometry-only options. Yep. So you never have to worry about rendering all of the sort of junk that we have to have in the scene in order to work. You never have to worry about that getting in your way on a preview render or even a final render where you're using the viewport technology.
Excellent. Okay, we do not have much time, so I guess the last thing I'll try and show here is the multi-instancing. Once again, I have not personally tinkered with this. I'm trying to find the right window here. There we go. I have not personally tinkered with this, but let's just grab the same robot, open up a new file, paste it, go back to our startup layout, and I just don't need any of these. Clean that up a little bit. All right, so we've got a robot. Let's try making some instances with it and see how far we can push it. So it's multi-instance, right? So that should work with animations, right? Yeah, let's break it. Okay, so is this the animated one? Oh, he's gonna move all. Oh, that's not. Yeah, there you go. It's not the final animation, but he's definitely animated. So let's grab everything, copy, new file, paste, cloner, put him into the cloner. So he's pretty beefy, and actually he's a lot of objects. Actually, it's a bad idea to do this because he's made of like 1,000. He's made of like 1,000 individual objects. But well, let's do it anyway. I'm gonna set this to multi-instance, and okay, instantly you can see that it's scrolling really well. So let's change this to interface is slightly different, so I'm tripping over it. Honeycomb array. I love me some honeycomb array. There we go. Get a wall of them. And let's see. Yeah, so 1,000 objects. He might be more than that, so that's probably a little dangerous. I will bake him down, but that's not going to play back in real time. Put him in connect, make it editable. And now let's just throw a lot of geometry at this, which was my real goal. So cloner, let's make more. 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 I'm trying to get to slow down. I think I'm finally not quite at 30 frames a second. And I'm not sure how many polygons the character is. I mean, he's not like super high poly, but actually he's 40,000. That's 40,000 polygon character. And we're making this many copies in the viewport and barely getting out of real time. So that has improved as well. I mean, it already improved once, but now it's improved even more. Oh man, I just want to make a render of that now. He looks cool.
Yeah, I've got a scene for this too, Chris, if you want to
switch yeah, totally. Really quick. Back to you.
So this is R21. Some of you guys will remember this scene file from one of our Cineversity. I think this was what's new in R20 when we introduced multi-instances.
The kidney beans.
But this is in R21, and you can kind of see the playback speed here. It's okay, but not great.
Well, shockingly good compared to earlier versions.
In S22, notice first of all that the multi-instances are supporting the MoGraph color here now, and then also look at how smooth it's playing back. So yeah, the performance is, and in fact, I'm probably gonna get myself into trouble for this, but let's just try doubling it, and yeah, it's still playing back really smoothly, faster than the R21 was. Yeah, the multi-instance speed up is really great.
Man, it's there are more things on the list, but we just don't have any time to tackle them. And we hit all the big ones. There's a lot of smaller things. Although I'm gonna jump us both up on screen here. One thing I have to mention, just because I haven't even gotten a test yet, so I'm assuming it's working. But a huge quality of life for me anyway. This is only going to apply to like 12 people in the world. But like a week ago, we were running into this during the live stream. When you use a constraint tag, some certain types of constraint tags don't refresh when you go back to zero. So if you use a spring tag, if you rewind to zero, it would spring back to zero. And now it's supposed to just reset back to its original position. And man, the amount of workarounds you have to do to stop that from happening. So if that is indeed working, then that by itself, I'd be like, cool, like great update. I love it. So.
Yeah, I can't say I've played with that either, but I do know that we've added a set initial state button on that constraint tag so that it'll store that default state and yeah, fix that problem that you're talking about.
Yeah, actually, I don't know. I'll test this in one of my live streams, but there's also like there used to be problems with the parent constraint, which a parent constraint is really powerful, but sometimes it could get scooted off. And if it constantly has an initial position to go back to, then the parent constraint could suddenly become incredibly powerful and reliable, where before it was really powerful, but sometimes if you did something a little bit weird, it would move and it'd be moved forever. So I almost never used them. I'd always use a PSR constraint to a null and jump nulls instead of relative positions.
Right.
So let's see. We got a minute for a couple. We'll just look at questions. We probably can't jump into cinema, but let's just see if anybody has any follow-ups. While we've got Rick here, it's a golden opportunity to ask any questions. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out and watching me stumble through something I literally hadn't clicked the button on anywhere. Thank you again, Rick, for coming and hanging out and being able to correct me for the places I didn't know what I was talking about yet.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, and I closed the loop a little bit for folks that came in late. I'm seeing a lot of questions about R22 versus S22. So this release is called S22. It's a subscription release for our subscribers. But again, that's the really exciting thing for me as a product manager, and I think for our developers as well. Is the opportunity now to bring these features out to you much more quickly than we've been able to in the past. I mean, there's always in the past been features that were basically done, and we just kind of had to wait until that annual cycle to sort of had the methodology to get them out to people. And we don't have that problem anymore. So it's super exciting.
We'd be waiting another 5 or 6 months to be able to play with UVs, but now we have it right now.
Right. And the great thing, too, is that, like we've mentioned, UVs is a continuing story, especially into the next cycle. So we have the opportunity now to actually get some wider customer feedback than we necessarily would have gotten in our beta, so that we can continue to improve on the UV story before the next release.
Well, I got my little bit of feedback. You kept seeing me trip over it. The UV icon looks too much like a polygon icon. I keep on thinking I'm selecting polygon mode.
Yeah. Well, I'll pass that on to the design team.
If it was just moved down one spot, I wouldn't be doing it. But it's right where I expect to see polygons. But
right.
I'm joking. Well, anyway, that's going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out. You got to make sure to tune in to C4D Live tomorrow and on Wednesday and on Thursday. There's lots of great presentations. Everybody's showing off really cool stuff. What's funny is when we're actually physically at NAB, I only get to watch like one presentation because you're just talking with people all the time. But now I can watch the presentation and be chatting in Slack. Or it was like I was simultaneously watching the chat in Vimeo and in YouTube and in my Rocket Lasso Slack channel. And there's like just seeing all the different conversations and figuring things out and seeing where people are interested. But yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Hopefully, like I said, I usually live stream on Wednesdays, but my presentation is going to be on Wednesday from C4D Live. At the same time, I would usually be presenting. But when you watch me live on C4D Live, a week later, exactly at that same time, I'll be live streaming off of Rocket Lasso on Twitch and on YouTube. So if you like the stuff, come and check it out. It's really fun. And just answering questions from the chat. And half the time, chat gives me the answer and we figure it out. But it's been really fun in season 2 this time. So another big, giant thank you to Rick. Thank you so much. This was super short notice. So like he only knew about this like 45 minutes before we went live, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna drive home and I'll jump on.
I kind of pushed myself on you in all honesty.
No, you were in the Slack channel and you said something. I was like, Rick, you want to join the stream? And you're like, okay. I thought there was like zero chance of it, so I was joking, but like, oh my god, he can do it! Like, yes.
Always love being here. It's great. There's a great community to interact with in chat, and it's always awesome to explore Cinema 4D with you, Chris, because you always take it in directions that I didn't consider, and we play off each other really well, I think, and figure out how to play with cinema the best way possible. That didn't make any sense, but okay.
No, thank you very much, Rick. Well, by the time I do my next regular live stream, I should have a much better handle on these and maybe have some demo scenes set up, so I won't be literally making it up live, clicking the buttons for the first time ever. But yeah, I think it went pretty well. Thank you so much again, Rick. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in my presentation, and I'll be in the chats hanging out at all of C4D Live. So thank you very much, everybody, and see you then.
Bye, gang.